Greetings everyone, my name is Utterville, and welcome to the finale of my Let's Play of HyperParasite. In this episode, I'll first go over some of the stuff I missed, as well as showcase some highlights. Then I'll give my overall thoughts. And as always, for full disclosure, I received a key from the developers in order to LP this title. I still don't know how to access this passageway. I'm either missing a blue key item, I need to be possessing a different body, or I need to be playing in co-op mode. Please let me know in the comment section what I'm missing. I never went to this location before, so let's complete it.
Nuclear meltdown.
Unfortunately, during this run, I never acquired any attack upgrades, so my DPS is going to be lower than usual. Shock is currently my second favorite damage over time effect. What does this do? So that's what the microchip is for. I can bypass the boss battle entirely. I decided to visit the meltdown again so I could check on more of the room generation. Plus this time, I have many more attack upgrades, so cutting through enemies won't pose a problem. I didn't expect to find you here, clerk guy. Thanks to my fire DOT upgrade, he's transformed into a joke. Bobber gets wrecked by the adventurer. He has a more difficult time dodging the boomerangs. Sadly, I don't have his body yet. Oh well. I always wanted to try out the alien creature, so let's do it now. So the babies it hatches targets enemies. Why aren't more enemies spawning? Did spawning those eggs break the spawn rate? I just wanted to show off the alien creature, not break the game. With all that said and done, it's time for me to give my overall thoughts on HyperParasite as a whole, starting off with the graphics, music, and sound effects. They did an acceptable job. Nothing too extraordinary, but nothing bad either. I do have a gripe with the graphical options, however. There is no way to set the game to windowed mode. Even if you use Alt plus Enter, it doesn't work. In this day and age, a windowed mode should be a standard option, so its omission is a glaring one. In fact, this issue was also present in the early access builds. Now, onto the gameplay, where I have some mixed opinions. First and foremost, I like the general gameplay loop, which is as follows. Enter a new room, kill all the enemies, potentially bodyjack someone, finish the room, and collect all the collectibles. Rinse and repeat until you either complete the stage or die. Combined with the procedural room generation, this gameplay loop never outstayed its welcome for me. Moreover, all the host bodies that I could possess had their own set of attacks, abilities, and stats. Although this also meant that certain enemies were superior to others by a significant margin, and this didn't necessarily correspond to how rare each enemy is. Take for example the uncommon tier 3 enemy, the Pyromaniac. Simply put, he outclasses most other enemies in the game, and this includes mini-bosses. This is due to his high DPS and fire damage over time effect. Speaking of which, I feel the fire damage over time effect is the strongest in the game, perhaps game-breakingly so, because once it procs an enemy, they stop attacking you and run around crazily, trying to put out the fire. The only danger they pose to you while in this state is setting you ablaze, but that can be avoided as long as you have fire or elemental immunity. Shock is another close contender. Once it procs on an enemy, it temporarily stuns them, and the electricity can arc between enemies. Cryo I barely experienced in the game, outside some superpowers, so I can't tell how strong it is. Bleed and Poison, although useful, paled in comparison with Fire, Cryo, and Shock. Most of the time, it's better to stun enemies, even while speedrunning, especially in the later acts, where enemies can 1 to 3 shot you. At least, that's how I feel after playing the game for over 20 hours. Another thing I like about this game is how every attack is telegraphed, either with the enemy flashing just before the attack, or a danger circle appearing on the floor. However, you need to react quicker in general in the later acts, as the telegraphing time decreases. The next thing I'll give the game credit for is its replayability, not only in terms of the enemies you can possess and the items and skills you can purchase from the shop, but also the different routes you can take. For every act, with the exception of Act 4, there are alternative areas which you can explore. For Act 1, it was the sewers and old sewers. For Act 2, it was the temple and bowels of Asia Town. For Act 3, it was the foundry and nuclear meltdown. And for Act 5, it was the hexagon and the bunker, the latter of which I couldn't access sadly. If I can find the blue key item that unlocks it, I'll include it in a bonus episode. The way to unlock all these alternative areas was by finding blue key items scattered across the world. these persist between runs. Plus, in these alternative areas, if you had the correct key item, you could skip the boss of the act entirely, which would be useful for speedrunning. However, the trade-off of doing so is that these alternate areas don't have access to the shop, so you can't store or spare bodies there. But of course, you don't have access to these at the start of the game. You need to unlock them across the course of several playthroughs. This segues nicely into my main complaint about the game, how you unlock characters. In order to unlock a new enemy, first you need to kill an elite version of it, take their brain to the shop, and invest enough money to unlock them. How expensive it is dependent on the character's rarity as well as what act you encounter them in, with characters from later acts generally being more expensive. I would be okay with this system had it not been for one thing. In Act 1, you start off with the hobo and policeman unlocked, which are some of the weakest enemies in the game. The problems start once you enter Act 2 and beyond, where you start off with no enemies unlocked. So if you end up dying there, and you have no bodies unlocked, you're out of luck. You're forced to play as the parasite until you either die, or you're able to unlock a new body, and encounter them in the world. Rinse and repeat with the later acts. And remember, any unspent money is lost when you die. Combine this with how much damage enemies deal from later acts, this poses a problem. I would have instead preferred if, for every act, the parasite could possess the weakest and second weakest enemies. That way players have a shot at survival if they lose their host body from a previous act. And if you want to make it more difficult, make it so that the weakest enemies don't commonly appear. I get why the developers did this, for the progression system and to promote more skillful play. However, it did not gel well with me. With repeated playthroughs, however, the game gets easier, much easier, thanks to the unlockables, although it requires some grinding, less so if you get lucky with the VIP discounts. This is why, despite what I said earlier, I don't mind how strong the DOT effects are. They help balance out the game, especially in the later acts. But once again, these are simply my preferences. If you play carefully and decently enough, it shouldn't take too long to unlock more bodies, especially if you decide to play as some of the safer characters. That's something I noticed. Melee characters tend to be riskier picks, but have higher damage, whereas ranged characters tend to be safer picks, but have less DPS. My last complaint, although it's more of a personal preference, is about the boss difficulty, specifically how they're ordered. In general, the main difficulty of the boss fights are not the bosses themselves, it's the enemies they spawn in. However, if we're taking into consideration the boss attacks alone, the two toughest bosses are the Ancient Warrior and the final boss mech. In fact, I say that the second boss is a significant difficulty spike over Double Trouble, even harder than Death from Above in some regards. And that's because of the two laser beams as well as all the rocks he drops. Now, don't get me wrong, Death from Above and the Sand Sneaks are hard too, but as I just said, they're mainly because of all the enemies they summon in, especially the projectile firing ones, and the ones that can zone you out, like the toxic mutants and alien creatures. Last but not least, let me talk about the story, or more specifically, the ending. That came out of left field for me. I didn't expect the president to also be possessed by a parasite. The child parasite did a better job hiding their presence, at least to me, not so much the mother parasite. I totally expected that her primary goal was to destroy the world, and that was based on the game's description, so that was a lie. I wonder if both of them made it back in time to the spaceship, or if they were killed by a nuclear explosion. Of course, this is also assuming if the suitcase was the genuine article. The young parasite may have been bluffing. Overall, at the very least, I found this to be a decent game, and I didn't even try the 2-player co-op mode. Perhaps I'll check that out in the future. I'd recommend this game if you're into roguelites and don't mind some grinding, more so if you want to 100% the game. Once again, I thank the devs and publisher for providing me a key. It's very appreciated. Well then, I hope you all enjoyed my Let's Play of HyperParasite, viewers. If you enjoyed it, please rate, comment, favorite, and or subscribe, as they all help out the channel. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter as well, and join my Discord server, as I regularly post updates there. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the future Let's Play.